Welcome to the Vulnerable Scientist Podcast. This is your host, Sarah Nyakeri. Here is the first episode of a new series that will be a bit different from the previous episodes in the sense that we are going to do topical episodes having different views from different people and of different backgrounds and expertise. The first topic of this series is the Kenyans' reactions on the 10-year GMO ban recently lifted. In this series, we're going to hear from scientists, consumers, farmers, regulators, to a common mwananchi on their take on this ban being lifted. I made a call to different people, both in and outside my circle, to give their views on what they think about the GMO ban being lifted. Here is what a cancer researcher had to say when I asked him why he responded to my call.
People talk about GMOs all this week, and some of the information is, you're just like, where do people get these things? And I think just like any other technology that comes or that is made in the West, and probably we try to implement it in Africa, the communication around these things is always, one, very terrible. Two, it is seen from an imperialist angle. Three, it's not done by the right people. At the end of the day, whatever is out there, whatever the masses hear and or respond to, are things that are not founded either in science or are not factual. Somebody's opinion, which everybody is entitled to, becomes the fact that runs the day, other than the actual scientific fact. That is something that needs to be corrected, and it can only be corrected by getting people who at least have an idea about what genetics is.
Speaking is Dr. Victor Oria, a cancer researcher at the Biotech Research and Innovation Center in the University of Copenhagen, based in Denmark. He is also a chief scientist in the Integrated Cancer Research Foundation in Kenya, an NGO committed to promoting cancer awareness and research on ways to fight cancer. He just said that we need people to give us facts, right? Since he has a background in biochemistry, which brings with him a wide knowledge in genetics and GMOs, I asked him to explain what GMOs are.
A genetically modified organism, in short, in quote, GMO, is any organism whose genetic material has been altered using molecular biology techniques or genetic engineering techniques.
What does it mean to you for the GMO ban to be lifted in Kenya?
I think for me it's a step in the right direction. I say this as a scientist because we as Africa, we are always recipients of technology. All technology seems to be originating from the West, be it in engineering, be it in life sciences, be it in marine biology and all these other sorts of technical subjects. We are always recipients of this technology. And as long as we are recipients of these technologies, it means that as a nation, we will never advance. We will never advance to a level where we can consider ourselves to be, independent and or drivers of world and economic progress. And if I give you an example, for instance, in the area of fintech, financial technology, you see Kenya is really ahead because the reception of those technologies have been has been quite easy in Kenya, and so you see a lot of fintech products developing and expanding. And something like mobile pay, which has taken over the whole world. I want to believe it began with M-Pesa. Yeah, even things like paying for our electricity bills through the mobile phone, receiving our medical results and whatever through the mobile phone, KCSE, KCP results through the mobile phone. These are things that started in Kenya, and it was just GSM technology. So we run the risk of always being late adopters of technology. And the way technology is today, if you're late in acquiring it and or using it, then what happens is by the time you start using it, people are ahead. When GMOs, I think, started becoming an issue in the early 2000s there, if I'm not wrong, maybe late 90s, 98, 99, early 2000s there. And the countries that left the door open for them, a lot of advances have come through that. Yet for us in Kenya, we are still at the discussion phase. And I think the problem is we never really got scientists to come out and speak about this thing as a scientific body. One would expect that a body like the Kenya National Academy of Sciences would have been at the front line of saying, guys, this thing may be wrong, and that's our initial perception, but we can never really understand it until and unless we go into it, we invest into it, we research it, and so on. And then there's a lot of cloud around it, and it means that we've delayed in terms of, like, getting even money for research from different funders abroad, or even in the country, people who may be interested in advancing agricultural technologies and whatever. It's this is I wouldn't say that it's a game changer, but it's a step in the right direction, because right now people who would want to work with Kenyan scientists on improving and developing more genetic techniques to kind of study plants, animals, and also human livestock and plant diseases. Now they're like, the government there is now receptive. Now we can do collaborations, and I think that's a big, big, big step for the country, and also for the scientific niche in Kenya. Yeah,
So is it a win for scientists, or is it a win for the Kenyan people?
it's a win for both scientists and the Kenyan people. Yeah, it's a win for both scientists and the Kenyan people, and uh, 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 it depends with how it will be communicated. You know, it actually just depends on how it will be communicated. If we start telling our people, for instance, that there's a huge chance that even the beer you consume, for those who drink beer, or even for those people who use insulin in hospitals, for those people who take antibiotics when they're sick, and for people who eat certain types of cheese and some dairy products, all these things have been made by genetically modified organisms. So what is the fuss about? Yeah, what is the fuss about? Yeah, so it's just the communication. And I think, and I don't say this in a bad way. I think activists and anti GMO organizations have really been very loud out there. Yeah, and they've never been countered, or scientists are probably, because most of them are, we're academics and we don't want to get into that. We call it a swine fest. Why should I go and argue with somebody who has no understanding about what's happening? But then that's the problem. I think sometimes we academics and scientists, we run the risk of being too polished and too elite, that we are afraid of getting into the mud. Because if we go out there and we get into the mud, one, probably we don't know how to communicate in a very simple way that as a member of the public will understand us. So that gap, the big gap that exists between science and members of the public, the general members of the public, is so big. And this space is now occupied by people who either controversies or conspiracy theories or just outright lies. And of course, because they have loud megaphones, they win the day. So, for you as a scientist, if you're coming in and you're now starting to explain that, listen, guys, there's nothing wrong with GMOs. Yeah, you first need to have an understanding of what it is. You first need to ask yourself what kind of technology actually went behind this product, or behind this improvement, or behind this discussion that we're having, before we can start arguing about this. But if people can actually understand that the beer you drink, the antibiotic you take, the insulin, the diabetics take, some of these foods that we eat that have got fancy or exotic flavors and so on, all these things are made by genetically modified organisms. So is it in crops that we now start drawing the line. I mean, so like I said, it's a win for both Kenyan scientists and the public. But to win over the public, there needs to be excellent communication in a simple and understandable manner so that people can actually understand this is what is happening and this is not going to harm you in any way. And also, it's also important that people understand the processes that a GMO goes through before it can actually be approved and put onto the market. When we make some of these products, as a scientist, and even I know because one of my mentors who actually works on biotechnology at Kenyatta University, he said one thing the other day on television that, you know, I cannot make something that is going to harm my family. Yeah, I'm not that insensitive. I'm not that I'm not that inhuman to make something that is going to make something that is going to harm you. Second, it's our reputation on the line. Yeah, it's our reputation on the line. So whatever is going to come out of say a lab, even before it goes to the shelf, there are a lot of very rigorous processes it goes through of regulation, of checking for biosafety, checking for toxin levels, checking for, say, food content levels or nutrient content levels. Are they changing? Are they different from the normal one, and so on? So it goes through a very rigorous testing process that by the time it's on the shelf, uh, it has the seal of approval. The only reason why I also think, and I would say this also with a light touch, that the only reason why there's also hesitancy in Kenya is because we know sometimes our institutions let us down. You know, you come across something on the shelf that is toxic or has, the chemical content is not what is written on the packet, but it's actually maybe there are high levels of lead in a product or mercury in a product and so on. So it's I would say the problem is not the GMOs. The problem is the culture that irrigates our regulatory system. Sometimes it is there are few crooks here and there who take advantage of the system and then give a seal of approval to certain products that don't meet the standards. But this can happen to any product, whether it's GMO or not. Yeah, yeah. So my message to those who are anti-GMO, I think one, it will be important to find forums, and this will require scientists like me and you and others, and those especially in Kenya who are working in the biotechnology field, to have these open forums where we can speak to members of the public openly, respond to their questions, listen to them, so that we alleviate their fears. Because you cannot work in an environment that rejects what you do. It feels very frustrating. Yeah. Because even if you're going to request for funds to work on genetically modified organisms, then Parliament, which is the body that is supposed to allocate money for public spending, will say, but why are we funding GMO research? We are not consuming GMOs in this country. But if the public shift changes, yeah, the public mood changes, if the public attitude changes towards this technology and the benefits that come with it, then it's a win for the country, and it's also a win for the population. But there's a caveat here. I think also when you listen to the news, maybe it's, I don't know, 9 p.m. or 7 p.m. news, you hear somebody saying, oh, as a way of curbing food insecurity, the government has authorized the cultivation of GMO, or has lifted the ban on GMO maize and maybe GMO soy and whatever. I think tying the introduction of GMOs to food security is a wrong concept. Kenya is not food insecure because we've not introduced GMOs. Yeah? Even with the introduction of GMOs, we might still be food insecure. Our food insecurity is because of starts at the production level. How much are we producing? And even if we are not producing enough, how are we storing what we are producing? And I know if you watch TV or you listen to news, we always see, every now and then NCPB making an announcement, 100,000 bags of maize have aflatoxin, or they were not stored properly. They're moist, they've grown fungus and whatever, So that's 100,000 bags gone. And one could say probably sabotage because people want to import in cheap maize to flood the market. And then so our food insecurity is down to production deficits, storage deficits, accessibility deficits, and affordability deficits. It's got nothing to do with GMO. And so tying GMO or the lifting on the ban on GMOs to food insecurity, for me, it's wrong. You should lift it up as a way of saying we want to build our scientific vigor. We want to build our scientific system to produce robust products. Because genetic engineering or genetic modification is not only for crops. It could also be for animals. Yeah, we could produce high quality animal breeds through GMO, through genetic modification. Yeah, we could start because right now Kenya imports almost all of its medicines, and for those that are made locally, they are probably these are now generic drugs whose patents have already been lifted. So you are simply using a formulation. I don't think we are doing any major research to produce any major drug in the country. I could be wrong, but this is as things stands now. I've not heard of a company that is really investing in novel medical research to develop new medical products. I don't think that's happening in Kenya. Genetic modification will give us this advantage. Yeah, because then we improve the scientific capacity of the country. Students or even researchers at the university levels, in academic institutions, in teaching hospitals, in some of these research institutions, once there's this scientific interaction and all knowledge exchange and among many other things, people are now able to think widely. And then we're like, okay, how can we apply this technology to solve some of the problems that we have? Yeah. We even hear of some people in parts of northeastern, upper eastern, and even Ukambani area where they have water, but the water is contaminated. Yeah, if we know what contaminates the water, whether it's an organic chemical that can be broken down by bacteria, then we can treat those water with genetically modified bacteria so that people get clean water to drink. These are some of the advantages of genetic engineering. So the advantages are widespread, but we've narrowed it to, oh, I'm not going to eat GMO maize, or oh, I'm not going to eat GMO beans, or oh, if you eat this in 10 years, you'll have a leaf growing out of your ear. It's really ridiculous, some of the things that you hear. But yeah, so this is my message to the anti-GMO people. There is nothing wrong with it. It's just the messaging around it has been terrible. And we know that bad news always travels faster than good news.
As a cancer researcher,
Mm-hmm.
do GMOs cause cancer?
No, GMOs do not cause cancer. In fact, take this example. If you're growing potatoes, and your potatoes are always affected by a pest, yeah, you're going to spray the potato with pesticides, yeah. So first you're killing probably some of the good microbes that live in the soil with those pests, depending on the concentration that you use. Number two, you are exposing yourself to those pesticides, because we know very few farmers probably will adhere to the protective clothing requirement that is needed before you spray your farm. Yeah? Ukizunguka tu around, you'll hear people saying, sisi tunafanyanga tu hivi. No? Sisi tunafanyanga tu hivi. Yet they're exposing themselves to very toxic chemicals. Those toxic chemicals are likely to cause cancer because they're likely to introduce mutations they're likely to introduce DNA breaks in your cells, and if these persist, then in the end you're likely to develop cancer. But if we introduce a gene into this potato plant that then kills the pest directly or acts as a repellent to these pests, then these farmers do not need to use the pesticides. So there's a huge chance of you getting cancer from using pesticides and certain herbicides, actually more than eating GMO food. Yeah, I would say that. But just a simple answer, I have not come across any news anywhere that says, oh, I ate GMO maize, or I ate GMO soya, or I ate GMO rice, and then I got cancer. I've never heard of anything like that. But I've heard stories, and even in the news, and even some of these big pesticide companies have been forced to settle lawsuits privately because farmers or cleaners or factory workers who were using a certain chemical got lung cancer or had some sort of lymphoma or had some sort of, myeloma cancer, mesothelioma, and so on because of exposure to these chemicals. Yeah? So, yeah. So if we are the balance of probability looking at chemicals and looking at GMO food, I think chemicals have a higher chance of causing cancer than GMO food. Yeah.
So are you saying that GMO plants made to be resistant to pests will actually help in reducing the cancer cases? Are you saying that?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that because all these are just risk factors. Using chemicals is just a risk factor. There are people who will use chemicals and never get cancer. And there are people who will not use chemicals and get cancer. Yeah? That's why they're just called risk factors. But I'm not saying that, if you use GMO plants and instead of spraying your crops, that then you will not get cancer. That one I will be lying. Yeah? But the fact of the matter is, and if you eat GMO food, you're not going to get cancer. That is that as it stands today, that is the fact.
You mentioned insulin and it being made from or a beneficiary of GMO. Has there been any report of people using insulin and them getting cancer?
I don't think so. I've never heard of that. I can't say that people using insulin have been able to get cancer.
The main argument that I've heard so far from the anti-GMO people on Twitter so far is now the lifting the ban is going to make the farmer suffer because now companies from outside will come in and be able to come with their GMO and get over the market over compared to the farmer who does not use GMO. The other argument that I've heard is the farmers, the controller of the seed, the controller of the seed to farm will be big companies, and the farmers will not be able to access the seeds to do farming unless in short, the farmers will suffer. That was the main messaging. What comment do you have about that?
I think this is where regulation comes in. Yeah? And this is where now the government, which is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, must make sure that the regulations that they're going to put in place protect the farmers. So one, I know that in Kenya we have KALRO, Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, yeah? And I know that KALRO, together with other research institutes in Kenya, work hand in hand with the National Biosafety Authority to work on certain genetically modified crops, especially I think cotton, maize, potatoes, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. It's been a while since I checked, but I think based on what I know they're working on these three crops at the moment. KALRO is a public organization, isn't it? So if we are going to plant, if you're going to plant GMO maize in Kenya, it's KALRO that is supposed to do the testing of this, or it's at KALRO where the basic research starts. Yeah, be it maize, be it beans, be it cotton, be it soya, and so on. All this begins at KALRO, and this is where now the Kenyan government needs to be very, very rigid. Any potential researcher who wants to do or who wants to introduce GMO crops in Kenya, yeah, they have to be tested in the country. Even if the research is done outside, one, it has to be in collaboration with KALRO. We need to have information and first-hand information about what is happening. We don't want to read it in papers. We want our scientists to also be, the generators of this knowledge. Because as long as the government has got the intellectual property rights, yeah, because if you're working for KALRO, you're working for the government. If you produce a seed, and especially food, which is a matter of national security, in a way, the government should own the rights to that. Yeah, just like the government owns a big chunk of Safaricom, for instance, yeah? Because it's a profitable thing. So once the government owns the right to the seeds through KALRO, then you keep the international players away. It's just as simple as that. Why are we worried about it? The international players are not going to come into the country if our government doesn't allow them. So it's up to us. Instead of saying that, oh, we don't want to accept this because the international players will come in and our farmers will suffer. No, that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is say, we are going to invest in our own crops, we're going to use the technology and build and develop our own seeds. And these seeds will be available to farmers at this price. Because now it's the government owning the patent, you don't really care about profit. Yeah? You only care that you break even so that you can keep producing the seeds. Second, you can say any GMO plant that is to be planted in the country. And you say, for instance, right now, the maize one is really, I hear it's almost being rolled out. The cotton one is almost being rolled out. The potato one is still a little bit behind. But you would say that these seeds, one, they have to be owned by a Kenyan company, even if it's a foreign organization that maybe owns the company that makes the seeds, but it has to be a property of Kenyans. Yeah. So then that means even as a government, because you're not supposed to regulate prices on seeds, or you're not supposed to regulate commodity prices because you let market forces play. But you can say on something as important as this, yeah, we're going to say that a kilo of maize seeds, I don't know how much it retails for right now. A kilo of maize seeds will probably retail at 2,000. This is 2,000 is enough for you to plant, say, 3 acres of land and whatever. So you have to regulate those prices, and you can only regulate those prices if you own the intellectual property rights. So that's the important part. When you open the market, or when you lift the ban, Are you allowing international companies to come in? And if you're allowing them to come in, the products that they're introducing in the country, have they been field tested in the country? That's very important because the soil composition in different countries is very different. Yeah. So it's important that before any international company can come into the country and introduce their own seeds and whatever, have those been tested into the country? And can they grow well in our fields without affecting other crops, without affecting the biodiversity, and so on and so forth, without, like, in the end running out maybe the other nutritious crops that just grow naturally in our soils. So that is very, very important. Yeah. And I think that is what will determine whether we really enjoy the fruits of science and genetic modification or not. Because the other thing is, if Calro develops the seeds, then it can then partner with local companies that produce seeds. What's the net effect of this? Yeah. Right now, what most farmers do, we are planting these hybrid seeds, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. We are planting these hybrid seeds. And for those in the villages or rural farmers like my grandmother, when they harvest, they select the best ones, they hang them somewhere in the kitchen, and then when the next planting season comes, they take those ones and then they replant them. Yeah. What this means, if we really work well, and if there's enough funding into Calro, and we are able to develop a lot of seeds for different crops and plants, one, it means that we are going to be creating very well-paying scientific jobs around the country. Number one, yeah, and then around these companies that will be now be making these seeds, but relying on Calro's IP rights. Yeah? There are also other secondary companies that will come up. Yeah. So they're very long term. Benefits for this, because right now, if you look at, for instance, Kenya, just as an example, the number of people we are churning out of our universities and even technical colleges who have done biology, biochemistry, biotechnology, microbiology, genetics, molecular medicine, and so on. There are so many. But where do they really end up? KEMRI cannot take all of them. ISIPE cannot take all of them. ILRI cannot take all of them. So a large chunk of them end up either working as bankers, either working as medical representatives, or going into some other form of careers. Which there's no problem with that. Yeah, there's no problem with that. But you and me have been in university, and we know once we go in, our dream is always to, I want to do science. I want to do some research. I want to develop a product and so on. Yeah. So what this will do is that once we start, developing our own seeds locally and then selling these rights to local companies to actually now manufacture these seeds in bulk, what that starts doing is that we now start attracting people with money who are interested in investing in research in the country. And that becomes a win-win for our country. Because right now, it's only the Kenyan government that probably is giving money to most, barely giving us money. A lot of money is coming from outside. And if there's no proper government funding into research, then nothing really comes out that we will say, oh, this research, we actually own it. And then it becomes like a bargaining chip for more funding from outside or for more collaborations from outside, so that we can improve on these things. Otherwise, we will continuously remain recipients of technology, and that means that we lag behind. Yeah, when you just think that you're about to kick everyone out of poverty, the poverty line rises. a couple of years ago, if you are earning less than $1 a day, or if you're spending less than $1 a day, you are considered poor. Right now, $1 in Kenya, what can it get you? Nothing. So basically, right now, it means if you are probably spending less than $3 a day or $4 a day, then you're considered poor. Yeah, because everything has gone up. Yeah, but it's technology, and not just in fintech. It's technology. If you cut it across, from business to computer science, to life sciences, agricultural sciences, engineering, civil and building, things like those. This is what spurs growth. Yeah. But we cannot just take them also blindly. We have to understand it in our context before we can use it. Then it will be very productive for us. Yeah. So we should not accept everything blindly, but we should take it, study it in our context, and see where can we actually use it to improve our livelihood, to build our nation, and ultimately, earn us some sort of value through either money or prestige and whatever we might consider valuable to the country.
The Kenyan government, just as most African governments, they have been known not to heavily fund research. And that has become a major problem when it comes to development of a country. As a scientist, I thought what Victor thought about this, with the incoming government having a sitting president who has a PhD in ecology, meaning he's a scientist. Does that mean that the research funding will increase, and that means more jobs for scientists who've been sitting out here not working? What happens now? What do you hope for?
Yeah, this is something that is very dear to me, because I am always, and wherever I get a chance to speak to people in high positions in government, and even just chatting with people while having a drink somewhere, I always try to say something that to say this: the difference between, say, for instance, Denmark and Kenya. Yeah, because Denmark, where I live, is a small country in terms of size and population. Mm-hmm. It's only 5 point something million people here, but they're probably they're so much richer than us. Yeah, mm-hmm. And one industry where they have heavily invested in is the life science industry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, mm-hmm. So they're able to develop a lot of biotech products. They're able to develop a lot of pharmaceuticals. They're able to develop a lot of technologies that are used in research and so on. And I think there's an op-ed I wrote. It will probably be accepted by one of the dailies or not. So when it's accepted, maybe people will read it there. Kenya's budget, I think the last budget that we read was around maybe $3.4 trillion, a trillion Kenya shillings. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's our whole budget. Denmark, just from exporting medicinal products and all these pharmaceutical and biotech products, just that alone gives them up to $4 trillion Kenya shillings annually. Mm. And that's a small part of the economy. Yeah, that's a very small part of the economy. Mm. And the reason why this happens is because they have invested in centers of research excellence. Yeah, public money is poured there. For every say 1 Danish krona, which is 17 Kenyan shillings. For every 17 Kenyan shillings that the Danish government puts into the university to fund research, they get out 85 Kenyan shillings out of it every year. Wow. This is in terms of patents, in terms of startup companies that are coming out, in terms of new technologies that are being developed. And when a new technology is developed, yeah, say somebody discovers, I've found a new way of treating hemophilia, which is this clotting disease, for instance, yeah. of course, it's a big global market. What then happens? It means that the companies that control this market suddenly become interested in a company like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they come in and they say, okay, we see you've developed a new product here. Okay, we are going to buy you out. And of course, when a company is interested in buying you out, then it means your value has already gone higher. Yeah, because they really need your technology now, or
Yeah.
they really need that product. So even just look at 2 years ago when COVID came in. BioNTech was not a big company.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in the year 2019, I think their total revenue was less than 300 million euros a year. If I check, I will reconfirm. We can reconfirm this later. But in 2020, they had around 483 million euros in their revenue. In 2021, once the vaccine rollout started, they had 18 billion in revenue. Just look at that jump from 483 million in 2020 to 18 billion in 2021. Yeah? That's the value that, just having a functional product in the market that is generated by scientific research and rigorous scientific research gives you. Yeah. So, with 18 billion, BioNTech can now expand its portfolio of research. It can now say, okay, we want to test mRNA vaccine in, say, treating malaria. We want to test maybe mRNA technology in treating or in managing, say, diabetes. Now they have the money. You can do that. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the importance of investing in research. And my hope, I have two wishes. Number one, this NRF thing, either you disband it or you change the act.
Sorry?
National Research Fund.
Yeah. So
the National Research Fund.
Yeah.
Either you disband it, or you change the act in totality. Because right now, if you look at the board or the people who make decisions there, they're either lawyers or they are businessmen or they're political appointees. None of them probably has got anything to do with science. It looks like just people who've been appointed to to be there, but they don't necessarily do anything. NRF in its entirety should have a panel of scientists leading it. And these are people who are not going to work full time. And I think in most countries, when there's a board that is managing scientific research funds, these are probably university professors or researchers who work full time as university researchers, and they just donate part of their time in serving in such organizations. Yeah? Because the only time they need to work is when they're disbursing the funds or when they are, sending out the research proposals to reviewers, or when they are actually listening to recipients of their funds say something so that maybe they can effect changes or whatever. But here we've made it like a full-time job for people who are so far away from science. They probably don't understand what are actually the benefits of science. So in the end, it's a lose-lose for us. I mean, I remember in 2020 when Uhuru Kenyatta put out a cancer call. It's the first time the Kenyan government ever put out a specific call to fund cancer research. We submitted a proposal. I've never had anything to date from them, whether it was rejected or accepted, or whether it's gone to the second or third step. I mean, so how can we really do science like that? Number three, global standards say that you need at least 2% of your GDP to be put in science to support, scientific research. Kenya's GDP is around $133 billion or thereabouts. Yeah, 2% of that comes to around maybe 0.7 billion dollars. That's around $700 million. Yeah, $700 million. If you multiply that by 100, that brings you to about 70 billion Kenya shillings. So this is the amount of money, 70 billion Kenya shillings. This is the amount of money that we should be investing in research. This is what a portion of this should be going to universities, a portion of this should be going to research institutions, a portion of this should be going to teaching and referral hospitals, and so on. Yeah.
How much
a
is
portion
going?
of this? I'm saying a portion of each of this 70 billion should be going to different research institutes and academic institutions around the country.
How much is the government giving currently?
I don't think it's even 10 billion. Even that's a far fetch. I don't even think it gets to 5 billion. I don't think so. It's very, very, very minimal. And even when the government gives this money, probably 50% of it goes to administration cost. Yeah. I always see, because I think I follow NRF and Nakosti on Twitter, I always see the employees, they're somewhere in Japan, they're somewhere in Australia, they're somewhere in Chile, somewhere in the United States, somewhere in Europe, and I'm wondering, these people are always traveling. What are they doing? Is this actually their role to be traveling? Yeah, every other time, or are they actually supposed to, disburse money and to scientists in the country? So yeah, I think NRF really needs to up its game, because otherwise we will still lag behind in scientific productivity and output.
Okay, going back to the question, do you think that having a president who's a scientist is a good thing for scientists?
It depends. Is he going to start listening to scientists? Is he going to walk the talk by saying a lot of our problems can be solved by scientific research, whether it's medical, whether it's agricultural, whether it's things to do with urban development or social research or philosophical research? Can it give us answers to our problems? Yes, it will give us answers and it will direct us where we want to go. So he has to walk the talk, because scientists cannot work with hot air. We have to work with money, with resources, and this is money which is from the exchequer. So as a scientist, we hope that he will be good to us. We hope that he will say, my government is going to commit 2% of the GDP every year for the next 5 years to boost scientific research in the country. But we wait to see that.
Is there any question that you hoped I would ask and did not ask that you can answer?
Is there any question that I hope you would ask me? Let's see. I would say I was hoping maybe to hear how can we really educate the public, or how can we really narrow the gap that exists between the public and science. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just right from genetically modified organisms to other sort of scientific discourse. Yeah. I think it's very important that different scientific organizations that we have in the country. I know we have different societies, like Society for Microbiologists, Biochemical Society of Kenya, the Kenya National Academy of Sciences. We have the African Academy of Sciences. We have the Kenya Society for Hematology and Oncologists, and so on. All these scientific societies that we have in the country. I think it would be very important that we get out of our bubble, yeah, and start reaching people, reaching communities where they are, and starting to communicate these things in a way that they truly understand. Because even right now, I think our vaccine uptake is still very, very low. The corona vaccine uptake, I think, is still very low. I don't know what percentage it is, but I don't think we've crossed 50%. And one of the reasons why this probably is the case, one could be maybe because we never got enough vaccines. But two is also, the communication around it. It was never really, 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 really clear. and direct enough to be understood by people. Yeah. So my take is scientists need to really cut out that eliteness and technical language and just speak to members of the public in a very direct and simple way, so that they can also be recipients of this scientific knowledge and understand it, so that when they hear about something, the first question they will ask, are you a scientist? And how do you know about this? Because if somebody is not a scientist and they are peddling the wrong information, and if you have an educated public, then they are able to call out such instances. And then we have a country where, yes, we can engage in discourse, but we engage in discourse using facts and truth, rather than rumors and innuendos and conspiracy theories. Yeah.
So does that mean if you're a scientist, whatever you say is true?
No. It has to be backed by facts. Yeah. It has to be backed by facts. And the beauty about science is that its truth is not cast in stone. Yeah. Its truth is not cast in stone. And to give you an example, when in the year 2000 when the sequencing of the human genome was commissioned, after the results came out, a huge chunk of the DNA was considered junk DNA, that it was not doing anything. And we started focusing only on that small percent that we knew, this is what is making the proteins and everything, the coding region. But then as time moves, we realize that part of this junk DNA contains a lot of very useful, genes. Things like long encoding RNAs are part of this junk DNA. I think even epigenetics arose from these areas that we consider junk DNA and so on. Yeah. So science is very dynamic and it changes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What is true today could be very different tomorrow, but it is based on facts. If we say blood is red, until somebody else does some research and say, it's not really red, because the composition of red is A, B, C, and D, but we think it's crimson because blood contains A, B, and C, and not A, B, C, and D, as an example. Mm. So yes. So based on existing evidence, whatever science says, that is what goes. But if it changes, then you don't say, I'm the one who discovered this, so now it's changed. Now I feel like, these people are lying. No, if there's evidence enough, and that's why you cannot do science if you're not humble, and if you don't allow yourself to be stupid. You have to be stupid enough to make discoveries, or you have to be stupid enough because then you become more curious. Yeah. But if you're very rigid, that this is what I know and that's it, you're never going to learn anything.
Dr. Victor is not the only person I talk to. I talk to biotech experts, farmers, consumers, ordinary Kenyans just like you. I was able to get their different views on this topic. Please keep it locked here so that you can also get the other views of the other people that can be summarized into one podcast or individual podcasts. If you'd like to comment or share your views about this topic, tag us at TV Scientist Pod at any social media platform that you have, or the Vulnerable Scientist Podcast if you find it. See you!